Mountain Dew. This is not an advertisement for Mountain Dew. But there's a reason for the name. There's a reason why they call it Mountain Dew. And we should all know or be familiar with, in the summer, if you go outside before the sun really starts heating up the ground too much, you can still go outside, the sun can be up. And you'll see that the ground is covered with little droplets of water, or what we call dew. When I was a kid, I didn't understand this. I didn't know where the water came from. I thought the water, came up out of the ground and I don't know, climbed the grass. I don't know. I didn't know what caused it. So now that we understand how a cloud forms, or what is necessary for a cloud form, now we can start to discuss how clouds form in nature. Because of course you look up at the sky, there's clouds up there, but it's weird to think that there's liquid water floating in the sky, and that eventually it becomes rain. It's just kind of crazy that that's what happens. But it should come together now that we talk about this. So this is what a cold front looks like. So cold front is when we have an area that's filled with warm air, and then a bunch of cold air, heavy, dense cold air, comes rushing in and pushes through. Kind of like rolling out a carpet, right? So if you roll out a carpet, or roll out a sheet on your bed, you can see it kind of flow through. And that's what the cold air is doing here. So because cold air is more dense than hot air or than warm air, the cold air comes in low and rushes through. And it's reached about to this point here, but what's it doing? Well, as it pushes through, it's taking this warm air here and forcing it up. And as that air gets forced up, there's less air pressure up there. So the atoms are able to move apart. And when the atoms move apart, they're not bumping into each other so much, so they cool. When air rises, it expands, or it decompresses, right? It expands and it cools. So we should know that as air rises, it expands and cooling is the most important part about forming a cloud. So we get the cold air rushing in, the warm air rises, and then as it rises, it begins to cool because of that expanding, and that forces these clouds to form really, really rapidly in a cold front, really rapidly. And this is when we have those quick thunderstorms that roll through. All right, so we get the warm, moist air, it rises, expands, and cools, forms a cloud, and then we get a bunch of rain as those little tiny dew droplets or cloud droplets or condensation droplets start to clump together, and they're forced into one. So this is a really, really good visual of how this works. So we've got smokestacks producing some type of cloud, and it literally is a cloud. It's just that it's not necessarily a naturally occurring cloud, but it's the same process that's happening. So we know that at the Earth's surface, or in the lower part of the troposphere, it's warmer, and in the higher part of the troposphere, it is colder. And that's all due to the compressed air at the Earth's surface, and then the decompressed air higher up. Okay, so you can actually see that, of course, we have some warm air coming out of a hot smokestack. So this is warm air, and what does it immediately do? Not only does it just rise, but you can see that the smokestack gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. So that's actually, we're watching this smokestack, the air expand. So the air that used to fill this area is now expanded to filling this area. And we all know that when warm and humid means water-packed air, warm, humid air rises, expands, and cools, we form clouds. So that is the process of how a cloud forms. And like I said, as these droplets of air, remember that inside of a cloud, there's actually little droplets of air, of water, just like this, little droplets of water. And the more these little droplets of water touch each other, so you can see the small ones here, the more they touch each other, the bigger the drops get. And eventually, as those droplets get so heavy, right, they become like rain droplets, right? As they become so heavy, the warm rising air can't hold it up anymore, so those bigger droplets fall out. And we call that rain or precipitation, okay? So, clouds form from air as it rises and expands and cools. So eventually, the relative humidity or the amount of moisture in the air increases, and as that continues to increase, eventually the air can't hold any moisture, and then we get 100% humidity. This is the moment the cloud first forms, okay? So we have a bunch of little droplets of air, just like what you'd have in your mirror of your bathroom, right? The temperature of the air, the air reaches 100% humidity, and this is called the dew point, and this is when condensation occurs, or when clouds begin to form at 100% humidity. Eventually, the droplets begin to touch each other, form larger droplets, and they end up falling from the sky. And that is precipitation, or rain. All right? So that's the basics of how a cloud forms. And remember, it's all about the fact that air is more compressed at the Earth's surface, and as we go higher through the troposphere, the air decompresses, which causes it to cool. So that's where the cooling comes from. Rising and decompressing causes it to expand and cool, okay? So those are the main three words: rise, expand, and cool. That's how a cloud forms.